Is President Obama selling out Israel over his pending deal with Iran? Is Benjamin Netanyahu exaggerating the threat Iran poses to Israel? Dr. Walid Phares will join us with his thoughts. Also, ISIS continues its persecution of Christians in Syria. When will we see real action by the West? Plus, we'll have Rick's report card on CPAC. That and much more tonight. This is The Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And tonight on the show, my SiriusXM radio star and Forbes columnist Rick Unger is here. There he is. Back from Washington. Not looking any worse for the wear. From the City of Brotherly Love, attorney Heather Hansen joins us in a very, very summer-like outfit.
Yeah, gotta bring it.
It did hit 40 here today, so that makes
summer.
sense. And finally, new to the Wrap, but certainly not to Newsmax TV or any other cable network for that matter, political strategist Hank Sheinkopf joins us. Thank you, Hank, for joining us. Okay, enough of the pleasantries. Let's go to the Daily Download.
Ladies and gentlemen, Israel and the United States
I got confused. I thought the SOT was out of
agree
the bump, not out of the...
that Iran should not have nuclear weapons. But we disagree on the best way to prevent Iran from developing those weapons. Now, disagreements among allies only natural from time to time, even among the closest of allies. Because there are important differences between America and Israel. American leaders worry about the security of their country. Israeli leaders worry about the survival of their country.
And that was Netanyahu giving a warm-up speech at the annual meeting of the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee. This just one day before his controversial speech in front of Congress scheduled for tomorrow. While Republicans and Netanyahu are under fire from the White House and Democrats in general for his visit to D.C., the Prime Minister says he needs to speak up about the dangers of Iran. Some say Bibi is exaggerating the threat and using the visit to bolster his re-election campaign. To get more insight, we're joined now by Middle East expert and author of The Lost Spring, U.S. Policy in the Middle East and Catastrophes to Avoid, Dr. Walid Phares. Dr. Phares, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me today.
So let's avoid the politics of Netanyahu's visit right now and concentrate on Iran. What is at stake for Israel regarding the U.S.-Iranian talks?
Well, for Israel, as the Prime Minister has mentioned, and there is a consensus on this even for those who disagree with him, i.e. the administration, that Iran has the capacity and will have the capacity if armed with nuclear weapons to obliterate Israel, and they're not shy about that. So their fight, the Israelis' fight with regard confronting the Iranians, have a different parameter than not just American confrontation for security issues, but also many Arab governments. I mean, Jordan, Saudi, UAE, Bahrain, even Qatar, with whom we have a lot of problems. All of those have the same issue with Iran as Israel, but they're not as vocal as Israel.
And Bibi said time and again that Iran is close to acquiring a nuclear weapon, or at least the ability to produce one. How close really are they as far as you know?
We have discussed this many times. My view is slightly different from the common view. For the Iranians, it's not how close are they from building the nuclear weapon. They are in control of the speed with which they want to build that nuclear weapon. Meaning, if they make the decision today, in 6 to 7 months, they can put together, if not a huge weapon, but at least a tactical nuclear weapon, which is enough to use with their the missiles they have. What really the game of the Iranian leadership has been is, number one, to build the delivery system, the long-range missiles. I've been making this case for the last 10 years. And second, more importantly, is to be able to have allies in the region from which countries, and so they could put also launching pads. That's way different from just having an Iran that is dangerous, but they will be able to put it in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon with Hezbollah, and now guess where? From Yemen as well. So that's the real bigger game of the Iranians.
Very scary stuff. We only have about 30 seconds left, but I can't remember the last time that any foreign leader, particularly an ally, has come to this country and fractured our government as much as Benjamin Netanyahu has in terms of the infighting. Just how damaged is our relationship with Israel right now?
I have a different take here as well. I mean, people have been talking about the destruction of these relationships. Washington is divided. It's because of Washington is divided that Mr. Netanyahu was able to come and deliver that speech, which we hope will unify American politicians. I mean, the last elections in the midterm were not just about domestic politics. There was a rejection of the administration's policy to precisely cut that deal with the Iranian regime and with partnering with the Muslim Brotherhood. Remember, we have a much bigger debate here in America among Americans with the administration than just having the opinion of the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. I can tell you that more leaders in the Middle East would love to come and address our Congress, but Benjamin Netanyahu has more friends and he's more daring.
Dr. Freris, we thank you for joining us today, and certainly tomorrow is a big day. I know you'll be watching. We'll be watching here, too, at Newsmax. Dr. Walid Phares, U.S. Policy in the Middle East and Catastrophes to Avoid is the book. Please go out and buy it. And again, we thank you for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, guys and gals, let's discuss. I saw you shaking your head throughout that interview.
He's on the mark. Look, Benjamin Netanyahu has been having this discussion in public and in places to meet before he was reelected head of the government some time ago. He's been saying the same thing, and the Arabs are very clear. They know the first stop may not be Tel Aviv. They may believe the first stop may be Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. That's really what this is about. The Shia-Sunni breakdown. And that will determine how Iran uses these weapons. This is very serious. The time to stop it is before you put American boys on the ground. The time to stop it is before they have the bomb. But this administration doesn't believe that somehow. And the Iranians have told you what they intend to do. When crazy people talk, one must listen to them.
Heather?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I also think we've got a major problem when we can't inspect. They don't allow our inspectors in. So we don't know what they have. And to trust that we're now going to be allowed to inspect just because they say so, when that has not been their rule thus far, is a little bit naive and very dangerous.
Rick, it's hard to believe that there's this much trust being given
well,
to the mullahs
I
at this
don't
point.
know. You know, there are so many questions that have to be answered. Last week, we saw a memorandum that was finally disclosed showing that the Mossad has a very different opinion as to how close they are to having a nuclear weapon. Today, we find out that this council that exists in Israel of high-ranking ex-military people, including 3 Mossad leaders, think that Bibi made a huge mistake coming to the United States, that it was political, that it's counterproductive to our relationship. It's getting very hard for me to know what is real there and what is political, and I wish we knew more about that.
Hank, are you surprised at how this has become a right-left issue and we only have about 15 seconds?
Not surprising at all. Either you stand with Israel or you don't. You can't, it's a great Yiddish expression, you can't dance at 2 weddings, okay? You have to have your behind in one place or the other. You can't move. And this is very clear. Either you are or you ain't.
And that'll be our last word on that segment. We're sure to be talking about that tomorrow, I have a feeling. Coming up next, ISIS ramps up Christian persecution in Iran. Can they be stopped? This is the Daily Max from New York City, and it's only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, joined by Rick Unger, Heather Hansen, and Hank Scheinkoff. ISIS now getting bolder in its attacks against non-believers. Last week they took hostage over 200 Syrian Christians. Now they are forcing them to renounce their faith and make a payment in gold in order to be protected. If they don't, well, I think we all know what their fate will be. We're now joined by Julian Tamarazi, president of the Iraqi Christian Relief Council. Welcome, Juliana.
Thank you for having me on, Joe.
So what can you tell us about the latest reports that ISIS is shaking down Christians in Syria?
The Assyrian Christians in Syria, actually about 400 of them have been kidnapped. 7 villages have been attacked. The oldest church, which is about 1,800 years old, was burned down to the ground. And as you mentioned, they are asking for ransom. We don't know how much this ransom is. However, yesterday they freed about 19 Assyrian men and women. 2 women and 17 men had been freed, and that was because of the negotiations that the head of one of the villages, who was Muslim, conducted with these ISIS members. But there are about 400 of them that are still missing, and in fact ISIS has come really very close to the Iraqi Christian Relief Council. One of my board members, 2 of her cousins were executed last Monday, and 7 members of her family have been abducted today.
Rick, I know you're
Juliana, I'm curious. You know, mafia-style shakedowns have really been part of the MO of this organization since the beginning. We talk about their black market oil, but shakedown is a big part of it. Why do you think that hasn't taken root in the mass media? So we better understand that these guys are not just all about religion.
I believe there is a subliminal anti-Christian sentiment that is going rampant among the media, among newscasters. And also, we don't want to offend Muslims. We cannot make a blanket statement and say all Muslims are terrorists. In fact, we should align ourselves with the moderate Muslims who don't subscribe to this sort of savagery. However, we have to call what it is. This savagery is Islamist extremism. And if we don't call it, how can we cure the problem? And we have to report what is accurate. The crucifixions that have been going on, the beheadings that have happened throughout Iraq and Syria have gone greatly unnoticed. And I'm grateful that you are giving us this platform to talk about this.
Juliana, yesterday 19 of roughly 220 Syrian Christians being held by ISIS were released. Any thought as to why we normally don't see mercy in any capacity from ISIS?
You know, we're shocked and we're grateful at the same time that they have been released. But I believe there was a moderate Muslim who stepped in and he negotiated and they freed them. And but, you know, there are about 400 of them, Joe, that are kidnapped, the Assyrian Christians today. And we're really afraid of what will become of them. And these include young women, young children. In fact, when ISIS attacked the 7 villages, the Assyrian villages, there is a report that there was a 2-day-old child, along with his mother, were kidnapped. And so this has been going on for a long time. And I believe the American foreign policy is greatly failing the minorities in the Middle East.
I have to agree with you there. Do you believe this is a religious war? And we're talking about a group of Muslim thugs, basically, using religion for financial gain. I mean, oh, pay us in gold. I mean, on one hand, they talk about religion. On the other hand, they say, well, if you pay us, then maybe we'll let these folks go. Maybe they're not quite the non-believers we thought they were. In other words, it seems like their religion can be bought off. Finish this thought for me. It just seems like ISIS contradicts themselves. On one hand, they say it's in the name of religion. On the other hand, they're saying, well, pay us off and everything's fine.
Well, when ISIS strikes, or when Al-Qaeda struck in Iraq starting 2003, they gave the Assyrian Christians 3 options. You convert to Islam, you pay jizya, which is this tax, these golds that are asking for, or you convert to Islam. So this is something that they have been doing for a long time, since the rise of Islam. This is a business for them. They're trying to create a caliphate throughout the world, and they want to scare the West, and frankly, they're doing a great job of it. We're afraid of talking about it enough in the media to really wake up the church, wake up humanity. Joe, I don't understand why the Christian West is silent when there's such Holocaust that is underway in front of our eyes. I believe there's a movie coming out called Sing a Little Louder, and this talks about the silence of the church in the West during the Holocaust in the 1940s and how the church remains silent still today.
Well, Juliana, I've called it a genocide on this show. Our panel has as well, and I think we have to start using that term more when it comes to this topic. Juliana Taimoorazy, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, good news. As we said, ISIS released 19 prisoners. Bad news is they've ramped up their persecution. Hank, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Juliana. Is ISIS like a mafia-like branch using religion for personal gain when money may be the object, or land, or power?
It is a combination of all three. If you want to prove that you are a radical Muslim, one of the things you do is you kill Jews or you kill Christians. I wrote for Newsmax a long time ago, a couple of years back, talking about this persecution of Christians in the Middle East. What I am outraged about, as a free-thinking citizen of the world, where are the protests in the street? Where are the people showing outrage? Why do Christians have to die? Because people have decided that their religion is wrong. Why is this allowed to happen? And where is the Pope? And where is the rest of the world when it comes to these issues?
It's true, Heather. Where the Pope has been largely silent on this.
Well, that is true. But you know what is interesting is the Saints tight end, Ben Watson, who is a very Christian and very vocal about his Christianity. He had a Facebook post today or yesterday about this issue and calling for people to stand up. He's calling for people to wake up, calling for people to pray for the Christians that are being targeted, and calling for people to be ready when it comes here. And that Facebook post has been shared, thousands and thousands of times. So I think there is an awareness building. The Southern Baptist group wrote a letter to the president asking him for more support. So you're seeing, as we talk about it more and as we face it head on, as opposed to hiding what it is, I think you will see more and more people speaking up. And the Pope has spoken, to be fair, the Pope has spoken about it, perhaps not as strongly as some would like, but he has spoken about it.
That's what I meant. He obviously has spoken out about it, but it should be a central theme in every Sunday and any interview he does. And I think he could just draw more attention to it. By the way, no irony lost in the fact that Ben Watson plays for the Saints. that only makes sense, but he's a good man. Anyway, a little levity in an otherwise depressing topic, Rick.
Well, look, I mean, I've been amazed right from the start that we know how these people make their money. And we've made this very big fuss about the black market in oil, how they've captured these oil wells. And we never talk about this. This has been all along one of their biggest tricks for making money. They learned well from the old school mafia. And we don't talk about it, and I don't understand why. We're so enamored with the religious aspect, we are not calling these guys out for what they are.
They're Nazis. There's no question about it. And they're worse than Nazis because Nazis didn't kill themselves in the process. That's the difference.
And that's the final word on that topic, at least until tomorrow night. Coming up on The Wrap, our own Rick Unger went to CPAC. Who are the winners and losers? Find out after the break. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. Welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Well, this should be interesting. Newsmax TV personality, and at least for one weekend, a member of Washington's cultural elite. Rick Unger went to CPAC last weekend, or actually during the week. Why send the progressive booze hound to the show to CPAC? Well, because he was willing to buy his own train ticket and hotel room. Thank you, sir. Rick, obviously, let's start with you. We're going to do winners and losers like yay and nay. Who was the biggest loser?
Well, first I better give credit to my other employer for paying for my train ticket and hotel room, or I might have to pay it next time, SiriusXM. I appreciated it.
Wow.
I thought the biggest winner, as much as it grieves me to say it, was Governor Scott Walker. He did not pack the room, and yet came in a very close second on the straw poll vote.
Now, for those who do not watch the show, you have to understand that
Does
Mr.
anybody not
Unger
watch the show?
has railed against the governor pretty much every
not a
time we
big
brought
fan.
him up.
I'm
You're not a big fan, but has he won you over? Does he have your vote in 2016?
Absolutely not. And it's amazing how many people I'm finding in his party who agree with me and for the same reasons.
Really?
So he hasn't. But he did.
you just called him the big winner.
He was the big winner at CPAC, absolutely. Now, I must hasten to add that CPAC has never had a winner of their straw poll that went on to be the candidate of the party. Let
Really?
alone, no, he didn't win.
Right,
That's
so
right.
he could
He
still-
came in second. Rand Paul actually won the straw poll by about 2 points.
Now, Heather Hansen, I'm going to take the rest of the segment off because during the break you were saying, Rick, I have so many questions for you about CPAC. So why don't we get a nice little two-shot there in the control room and
Ask
you
your questions.
take
What
over.
did you think of Jeb Bush?
I actually thought he held his own. I really did. I mean, this was an audience that was not favorable, although he did bus in a lot of people. It was fascinating. The story we thought that was going to exist for 24 hours before he arrived was this planned protest.
Right, which you
where
talked about.
Everybody was going to get up and either turn their back on him or walk out. You know what went wrong with that? They didn't realize, the protesters, that you better get in line first to get into the room.
Right.
Because by the time Governor Bush's folks that they had bussed in from K Street filled the room, there wasn't much room for any protest.
Yeah.
So it never really came off. I thought he held his own. I thought he took it like a man when they booed him.
Right, he handled that really well.
He
it
did.
seemed.
So, you know, I can't say he was a winner, but he wasn't the loser he could have been.
And the other thing I wanted to ask, and I've brought her up almost every day last week, but Carly Fiorina, I think that she is the one woman on the scene who maybe, because it looks like Hillary is going to be much more proactive about the gender issues. And so it seems like Carly may be the only person who can maybe counter that a little bit. What did you think of her?
You know, people tend to like Carly Fiorina, but they don't talk about her. Of all the conversations that I had, she never came up once.
Really?
She really did.
Is it because she's run for office before and didn't
know.
win? I know she ran in California, and that's kind of a tough
And she
hill to
didn't
climb
win
for any
there.
Republican.
Right.
So she's 0 for 1, and how could she, if she can't win in California, how's she going to win the presidency?
I think that she just hasn't, well, she certainly hasn't captured the heart of the Tea Party. So she hasn't captured the heart of CPAC.
But don't you think she's really pushing for the vice presidency anyway?
Maybe,
Yeah.
but I don't think that she has a lot to offer because, as Joe just said, she's from California.
But she's
Couldn't
a
even
woman.
deliver California.
True.
But she's a woman.
So there are women
Hank,
that would
did-
make a lot more sense.
Did you watch? Did you observe? Do you have a horse in that fight in any capacity? What were your thoughts?
I think that I have just a generalized theory about what will work, having worked on national campaigns and successful presidential campaign. Jeb Bush and Portman from Ohio would probably be the strongest ticket.
Agreed.
It would deal with the gender issues. Why? Softer argument. Suburban mothers would certainly feel comfortable about Portman a lot. He has an openly gay son, I believe, which begins to mitigate against some of the harshness that some people feel the Republicans generate, and that causes losses in the suburbs. Bush would be very, very good because you go right down the center, and he can win that South Carolina primary.
Let's not forget that Jeb Bush, in all likelihood, delivers Florida.
Well,
and
yeah.
Rob Portman
delivers
can
Ohio,
deliver Ohio,
which is the
find
end of,
a way for the Democrats
which is the
to
end of the
win
electoral map
without
by the
those
way.
two states.
Now, you know, it's more fun to talk about the losers.
Oh,
Right?
the loser,
About a minute and a half, so you have to be
the
pithy.
loser was very much Mike Huckabee because he didn't show up.
I think Harold Stassen was the worst. Right?
Okay,
But
so
you know
no
what?
Huck.
There's something I do have to add. I considered myself a winner. And the reason I did was I had the opportunity to go to CPAC and have some fantastic conversations with people who don't see the world the way that I do. But once they knew I cared about what they had to say, we had some really, really good talks.
Do you see what he did?
So
That's great.
Actually,
Stepped right away from the
see,
losers.
there I am with the sheriff of Milwaukee County and his friend.
Oh wow, look at that.
That's wonderful.
But still, I am so impressed with what you just did.
What's
Totally.
that?
You took the losers part of this segment. You say, you know who the big winner was?
I am an
I
optimistic
won.
guy.
Rick
I'm
Unger.
an optimistic
You don't wanna
guy. I
point
don't care
out
about
any
losers.
losers?
I care about winners.
You talk about Huckabee. He wasn't there. Who was the
He wasn't there.
biggest loser that was there? 10 seconds.
Boy, I don't know if I can say beyond him. I don't think there was one. I really
No
think
one
that
embarrassed
Mike was
themselves
it.
then.
Nobody really. I mean, Walker could have been because of his comment about if I can handle, 100,000
Protesters.
teacher
Yeah,
protesters, I can handle.
that was
Okay.
definitely equivalent. Yeah. Mhm.
All right. And on that note, we'll talk more about this, I have a feeling. Coming up next, it's potluck time. This is the Daily Wrap, and it's only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. It's potluck time. This is the part of the show where we go around the table and share our favorite stories of the day. Rick Unger, head chef tonight.
Head chef, I was amazed by a poll that I saw today. We all know that the country are not big fans of Obamacare, right? We've seen the numbers. And yet a poll came out where the question was, if the Supreme Court should rule that the subsidies are only available to state-operated exchanges. The poll's on the screen right now. How do you feel about it? Well, people, as you can see, are extremely unhappy about that idea. They want those subsidies to continue. And yet, how do you square the fact that they want their subsidies and yet they think Obamacare is the worst thing that ever lived? You know what I think we're finding out more and more? What we found out when Jimmy, who's the late night host?
Kimmel.
Yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel said to people, how do you feel about Obamacare? Oh, it's the worst thing ever. Get rid of it. And then he says, well, what do you think about this Affordable Care Act? Oh, that's a great idea. That's what we should be doing. This is what polls like this are showing us.
But I'd like to know a little more about that poll. Who was being polled and where it was, because I feel
It was
as
actually a
though-
conservative poll, by the way.
But I feel as though there's a lot of outside pressure on the court right now. You've got Burwell coming forward and saying, oh, we have no other plan. And if you're telling people these are your options, either
Well, there is no other
Obama,
plan.
but there's the possibility of another plan. You've got Paul Ryan looking to farm some sort of a bridge. You had the op-ed written on Sunday by 3 of our Republican senators about a way to formulate
which
another
didn't
plan.
work, by the way,
Well,
either.
but we don't know yet. But the point being, I'm not going to argue that there is another plan, but I will argue that the court shouldn't be influenced by those
I
issues.
agree with you.
And there certainly seems to be an attempt to do that.
Well, gee, go figure that somebody might want to influence how somebody thinks about Obamacare.
Poisoning a jury pool? Who would ever think of such
Yeah.
a thing? I mean,
Well,
oh
they're
my
supposed to
goodness.
be
Because
different than that.
Never
Certainly
happened.
nobody's tried to influence
There's
anybody
no
against
industry
Obamacare.
like that in this country where you hire people to poison jury
No.
pools.
Jury
The PR
pools
side,
are
of course,
very
there is.
different than our
They're
Supreme
taking
Court
away
justices.
Hank's way of making a living.
How am I
here,
going to make
you
a
know?
buck? What's wrong with you? What are you, a communist? Unbelievable.
Is it fair to do any poll on Obamacare right now because it truly hasn't been fully implemented?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I would obviously say no, because people don't even understand what it is. It's been largely implemented, as much as people hate to hear me say it, with some problems that we're clearly seeing, and I count among those younger people paying
Right.
higher premiums than
Right.
we had hoped. it's working in a lot of respects. I know that's distressing to many, but it is.
It is certainly a conservative issue because it is ultimately about a redistribution of healthcare dollars.
It is.
Where a single payer would have been a much better way to deal with it,
boy,
and
you
would
preaching to the choir
would
on
not
that.
have allowed the insurance companies to control the economy of this country.
So,
agree.
quick answer. When we look back on President Obama's 8 years in office, will this be his crowning achievement?
Yes.
Okay,
I
Heather?
don't think so.
Hank?
Who knows? I mean, there's so much disaster yet to come. We
Right.
got to keep this guy in office.
Right. Who knows?
That's true. We got 2 more
There's so
years.
much more disaster we can look forward to. I mean, it could be great.
Who knows is the correct answer. Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah, who knows is a fair answer.
Okay, Heather, second course.
Does anyone know what a stingray is?
Yes, it is a car.
Okay, it's a car, it's
I
a
was going to
fish.
say it's a fish.
It's a fish.
Okay.
It's also a form of phone surveillance that is being used currently. It's in a suitcase, and it's used purportedly to catch bad guys because you can figure out where they are, where they're going, where they've been with this stuff. The problem is you can also catch up everyone else in the area's cell phone data and know where they are and where they're going and all this stuff. So the ACLU has been extremely concerned about it, privacy concerns, all kinds of lawsuits. Now we're coming to find out that these stingrays actually interrupt our cell phone service, perhaps could make it impossible for us to make phone calls when we need to, and it is at least arguably been vetted by the FCC. So there's some questions as to whether or not the FCC knew this. Were they so busy with net neutrality that they just pushed this aside? Or was this something that they didn't think was that important? And now you've got Senator Bill Nelson out of Florida who is raising this issue as an important privacy issue. It is an issue with regard to safety, and it's an issue that no one seems to be talking about. You know, local law enforcement.
We are now.
Well, local law enforcement has access to these when they use them for arrests. If the defense attorney reaches out and
Right.
says, I want that information, they make a plea deal rather than give that information.
Well, that's good to know.
So people are getting off on serious crimes because they're not allowed to share the information.
Interesting.
By the way, I was right. I looked it up while the camera was on you.
It is a car, yeah.
The Corvette
It is a
Stingray
car.
was introduced in
Yeah, no, we know you're right.
1963.
It's a
It's
fish
so
too.
hard to
remember
put
it
one
well.
of them in a briefcase
Remember, you
for
had 6
surveillance.
of them.
I have
Probably.
6 of them in the garage. Now it's Jay Leno.
You know, that's how you can't put them in a briefcase to go do a surveillance on someone. That's part of the problem.
That's a very
I
good
like
point.
the PKK story in the Wall Street Journal, and I'll tell you why. Because every once in a while, it's good
Did
to
he
read
just ruin
about.
our next segment?
It's good to read about.
You're not up
You're
now.
not.
Oh, I'm not.
yet,
Oh, I
Hank.
did. Oh,
We're still doing
You
Heather.
get a whole 3
Now you
minutes
invite
to
these
discuss
guys.
this.
I'm leaving. Thank you. You were great. You were great. Leaving
Actually,
a high
good.
note.
It gives us
I have
a
my
little
high
bit of
note.
a
I'm out of
tease.
here.
Actually,
where you're
Heather,
going.
I like the story, and I was not aware of it, and you're right.
dangerous.
That's terrible. It's dangerous.
gonna be
dangerous for
wrong.
the freedom
You'll
of
see
the
it in
people
front
in
of
this
the
country.
Supreme Court because they're going to have to decide whether or not
Yeah.
you need a warrant for these types of searches.
You need a
glad you
warrant.
brought it to
It's an
attention.
illegal search, and it's a lot of bad things altogether.
And we'll get to the next potluck segment next, where you're going to say the same
we've
exact
already
words.
done
No,
that.
I'm saying
Seconds
differently.
ago. Anyway, we come back with more, including my own. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm your host, Joe Concha. And if you're just joining us, we're in the middle of our potluck, where we're sharing our favorite stories of the day. Hank was so excited that he wanted to talk about it last segment.
I couldn't help. I started at the top of the hour. I said, let's start talking about it now.
We like passion.
We
here.
like that. We like it. I said, I'll just take the whole show and talk about this. Nothing.
Nice.
Let's redo ours as Hank starts. What do you think?
Oh,
Stop it. What are you serving up?
Listen, it's always great to read the bad news. It's always good to try to find heroes in the news or people that matter, people doing something that has value. You know, we have the Kurdish rebels. Their leader, Öcalan, is in Turkish prison trying to negotiate a deal with the Turks, who are using this obviously to strengthen themselves within the NATO alliance. Why? Because the Kurds are the only ones that have had any success of any consequence against ISIS in Syria. It's very simple. The Turks don't want to put troops in, but they have the Kurds. Let them go and do their jobs. Small group of people. They're 20% of the entire Turkish population of 77 million, seeking their freedom, but having the courage to stand up and do what the rest of the world refuses to do. So they're my heroes of the day, and they deserve it, and Öcalan deserves to be released from prison by the Turks, get this deal done, and get more of those Kurds out doing what we should be doing and should have allowed to have happened.
Explain who the PKK are.
PKK are the rebels. I mean, they're the organized Turkish Kurds operation against the government, and they've been in battle with them for years.
But they're currently on
go
a
ahead.
bunch of terrorism lists.
That's correct,
That's what I was gonna point
which
out.
is unfortunate. they're on the terrorism list because the Turks, don't like this, and the Turks.
But
we don't want to
actually,
upset
don't
the
a lot
Turks.
of the Kurds also view them as terrorists?
A lot of the Kurds don't like them, but you know what? In the present state of affairs, we do know one thing is for sure, and military experts have been saying this for quite some time. The only people who have had any real impact against ISIS are the PKK.
Well, and didn't the French president recently invite them to the palace?
Hollande did.
Right. So you definitely see the tide changing.
The tide is changing, and maybe the only way to get peace between the Kurds and the Turks is to make this deal with Öcalan and to let him out and to let those Kurds get to work. Because
you think the Turks will do it?
I don't think the Turks will do it.
They
And I'll
don't
tell you
want
why.
to, do they?
Erdogan will never do such a thing because he will never admit defeat. What he can do is wink and smile, make a deal, and let the Kurds go and do their business that the Turks don't want to do in Syria.
Right.
Middle East boots on the ground, as we've been saying
That's
over
what
and over here.
that's what these folks have done, and they may have been on the terrorist list, but Jesus, they paid a terrible price.
Yeah.
Of course.
Terrible price.
And Turkey and they continue to feel threatened by the Kurds. They think if we arm them too much, then somehow the Kurds will be boldened and say, hey, let's go to Istanbul. I never understood that.
It's idiotic, but the Turks are not stupid, and you know what they know is a more serious threat? It's the porous border between them and Syria, which the refugees are coming across, and maybe those refugees will be some people who would like to blow up the rest of Turkey if they got their way to do
It's
it.
a unified enemy. We've talked about that before. It oftentimes.
And there is no more border. It's
absurd.
Yeah.
It's just a big old mess. Speaking of borders, we're up to my potluck now. A slightly serious topic. Well, maybe not. So I got to read every time North Korea launches a missile in any kind of direction. It's always on Drudge. It's always one of the lead stories on cable news, or if you go to any internet publication, I got to read about North Korea launches missiles as U.S. South Korea do their drills. And you know where the missile goes? It goes straight up, and then it kills maybe a shark, a couple of fish. It goes in the water every time. I keep having to hear about how this is just the scariest thing.
But that was
Every
my pet shark last week. He ran away from home and ran to North Korea. I can't
Personal
believe
problem.
it.
No.
If he's
It was
going to
my
North
pet
Korea,
shark. Yeah,
That was
Irving, my pet
Jaws-y?
shark. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's horrible to hear.
It was awful.
But it's just one of those media stories, and I'm a media guy first. Like for instance, I hate it when every time I watch the news, I got to hear about non-farm payroll or whatever. No one knows what this means.
I
And
do.
it takes a 10 second. You do.
I
You
know
never
what it
explain
means.
that.
You know,
explain
or
that.
what are the weekly jobless claims? Like anybody's doing the math at home and knows what it means or even cares. And yet I got to hear about that every week. Just like every year, I got to hear about Kim Jong, whichever one's in there, is it Un?
Yeah.
He's
Is
Un.
launching a missile somewhere, and it's going nowhere. They don't have any capability. It's always threats.
Well,
it's always hot air. I'm not finished yet, Hank. And they Sorry, this is where I go on a roll.
I got it. I got the whole thing. Please take the Thorazine, take a lot of it, and call me tomorrow.
Okay, no, in all seriousness,
You'll feel much better then. No, I'm not going to steal anything. I say the point is what you don't understand is what you're undermining is the abacus business, because the Department of Labor is going to give an abacus to everybody in the United States when they announce those figures so we can figure out what the hell they're talking about, because no one knows at all.
I don't know what abacus means. No, I really don't know what abacus
It's
means.
a counting machine.
It's a counting
Counting
machine. From
like an old
Counting
old-time
machine?
calculator to
Yeah.
add up the numbers.
What is this, 1957? A
exactly
counting
the
machine?
point. Exactly the
Put
point.
it in Google. That's what I do. I ask
You know what?
Siri.
It probably
You know?
I'm impressed.
What's 50 plus 44?
It probably doesn't count as news. If
The
you
answer is
know
94.
it's going
There
to
you
happen.
go.
Yeah,
There you go. You talked over
That's
Siri.
Siri.
If you know what's going to happen, it's probably not headline news. Everybody knows that that North Korea will fire missiles into the water when we have our joint South Korean mission. It happens every year.
Yeah.
But it's a headline. It's not even like
I
it's
know.
you see what they're doing this time? What, for the past
Drudge,
17
baby.
years?
It's Drudge.
I think they just like to show him on TV. He makes
Maybe.
good
He's so
B-roll.
handsome.
Let's bring Drudge
There he
on
is
so
back
you
on
can
TV now.
smack him around.
He's so handsome. And
Let's
they're
see
all
what
good
happens
to see
around.
him.
Look
We
out.
have the
They
team to get
calendar-
to, people.
They have calendars
That's all
with
the
him on
time
it.
we have for tonight. And when we come back, it's time for Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's time for Yay or Nay. Well, how does this sound as the perfect start to last weekend? Passengers on Friday, passengers on a plane, were stuck on said airplane for 9 hours due to icy weather conditions. You're like, okay, they're in the air, the flight took a little bit longer. Oh no, the Oklahoma City bound flight, a trip that should have taken under 60 minutes to complete, was stuck in Dallas while crews spent 5 hours de-icing the plane and runway, only to find out there were mechanical problems on the plane as well. 6 Hours into the ordeal, passengers started getting restless, kicking the seats in front of them, cursing, drinking, which basically happens to me on every flight I'm on. Those on the plane were given 2 chances to leave the plane for good, one to get off and get some food and then come back. But because the plane never reached the tarmac, the whole ordeal did not violate whatever the Department of Transportation's 3-hour delay limit is. Point is, they were stuck on a plane for 9 hours that wasn't even in the air. So are yay and nay, Hank, since you now know the rules. Should airlines be forced to compensate passengers regardless of the plane's location? In other words, should they get a free flight anywhere in the country now at this point from American Airlines? Yay or nay?
Yeah, you take 9 hours of my life. I'd like to be compensated for it appropriately.
Well done.
I'm with him. Absolutely, yeah. You can't have it's bad business. You'd think that they'd want to compensate them, but they don't care.
I'm saying nay because it's not good enough. Any airline that does that, I never understand how they get away with this. They should be grounded. I'm telling them right now, get ready to arrest me because if you ever do it to me, I will fake a heart attack.
Oh,
But in first class, they do take better care of those passengers stuff than in the regular.
It's just profoundly wrong. You can't tell me there's not a gate that
Well,
you can get people
And in
off.
first class, they'll take better care of your heart attack.
Yeah, Hank makes a very good point.
The onboard doctor?
Yes, that's correct.
I'm a yay in terms of getting the free ticket because this happened in Oklahoma City where icing happens all the time. It's very common there. They knew this was coming. Anyway, a very aggressive owl is brutally attacking residents in the Netherlands, and their only line of defense there is, get this, an umbrella. Wait, huh? Yeah, the European eagle owl, nicknamed Terror Owl by many of its victims, has attacked about 20 people by swooping down and sinking its talons, whatever that is, into the victim's flesh. I'm going to go with, is that the claws?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. It's like abacus. Anyway, one victim described his attack as being hit with a brick covered with nails. The town has applied for a permit to catch the owl, but it is, of course, a protected species. In the meantime, officials are advising residents not to approach the bird and to use umbrellas if they're walking outside in the evening, which is when the owl is most active. So, anyway, the umbrella is going to do anything, right? If it wants to get through it will get through it. Is it time, Rick Unger, for the terror owl to meet its maker? Yay or nay?
Yes, there's no such thing as protected species because I'm a protected species. If it's going to hurt me, maybe this is an argument for guns in Norway. Wow. Ooh, NRA is going to give me a point. I've never gotten one before.
I don't think it's a fair fight. If you can kill it with the umbrella, I say yay, but I don't think you should be able to shoot it.
Hank, terror owl, gun.
I wonder what Gene Kelly would do in Dancing in the Rain. If you use an umbrella to kill the owl. I mean, it's really simple. Listen,
true.
the owl, kill the owl, and get on with it, okay? Owl, you must die. There's nothing else to say here.
Wow, this is a very dark yay or nay that we're having tonight. I'm a nay just because...
You love owls.
Yeah, I love owls. I do. That's true.
Comedy.
Anyway, late to the party but still a star, the NASDAQ Composite has hit 5,000 today as of exactly 10:13 a.m. And that's after 15 long years, the year 2000. Does the president, who barely mentions Wall Street and its gains whenever touting the economy of late, deserve credit for the rapid stock market growth over the past 3 years? Yay or nay? Now, before you answer this, Rick Unger, I always do find it interesting that neither political party likes to bring up the fact that the stock market is just going through the roof, whether it be the Dow or the NASDAQ.
Actually, I disagree with the premise of the question. I think the president quite often cites the stock market doing so well.
But that means the richest 1% are doing well.
Well, that's actually not entirely true because a lot of people have 401k plans and they're invested in the stock market. So it's great news. Hope it keeps going. And does the president deserve credit? It depends. If you're somebody who puts a lot of blame on the president for things he doesn't deserve, then yes, he gets the credit. If you're rational, you realize that a lot of these things happen outside the scope of the president. He's not to blame for a lot of the things he gets blamed for, and he probably isn't entitled to credit for this.
I think it happened in spite of him, not because of him.
Thank the Fed for keeping rates low and watch what happens. And that's what happened. And guess what? That policy has helped a lot of people the president probably didn't want to see get more rich.
Hank, again, the voice of reason. I basically say what he said.
I don't agree that was the voice of reason.
Anyway, yesterday was Leonard Nimoy's funeral, as you know. Spock did die or pass away at age 83, as we mentioned on the show on Friday. Captain James T. Kirk, also known as William Shatner, wasn't available because he already committed to a charity event. So, should the captain of the Enterprise have bailed on said charity event and gone to Spock's funeral instead? Yay or nay? Rick, quickly.
No, he shouldn't have bailed on it. He did the right thing.
Heather.
I agree. I think that he had to beat the charity thing.
Keep your commitments, and he did.
He sent his kids, by the way.
Yeah,
he did.
kids
He
went.
did.
He wasn't dodging it.
I just think, and I'm going to go with Nao in this one. You know, somebody that long, you know, the charity can wait till next week. Spock's funeral only happens once, so Leonard Nimoy, I should say. So anyway, thank you, panel, for being here. I appreciate it. That's our show for tonight. Tune in tomorrow night, 6 p.m. I'm Joe Concha saying bye-bye.